In 1967, a year after graduating from the University of Wisconsin, John Anderson founded Anderson Packaging Incorporated. A few years later, upon inheriting and selling a third-generation family business, Anderson created a holding company to manage a series of small and medium-sized businesses that had been acquired. In addition to contract pharmaceutical packaging, the portfolio included an automotive parts manufacturer, a high-tolerance plastic injection molder, and a heat treater. In 1972, Anderson purchased a 5-acre wooded parcel just north of downtown Rockford and built a home on the hillside in 1975. The problem, however, was a soggy pond on the lowland portion of the property that had become a teenage hangout. Anderson had asked his gardener to clear the dead trees and heavy brush with the idea of creating a loosely designed Japanese-style pond garden. An ad for a Japanese garden builder, placed in Chicago's Japanese newspaper, and consultation with a few Japanese business owners generated no results. Changing courses by working with a local contractor, Anderson attempted a Japanese garden, but quickly realized the do-it-yourself effort was doomed. In 1978, Anderson visited Portland for a meeting about the possible acquisition of a new business. When the meeting ended quickly, and with a few hours to fill before his flight home, Anderson asked his cab driver to take him someplace interesting, which led to the discovery of the Portland Japanese Garden. Anderson was impressed. The Portland Garden reminded him of those seen on a post-college trip to Japan in 1966 and on a second journey to Japan with his wife Linda in 1973. Both trips were taken to visit his friend Akira Ono, president of NAJGA, a friendship that emerged as a result of their father's business relationship. Although the trips were general tours, Anderson was moved by the beauty of Japanese landscape, natural and man-made, and by ingrained Japanese hospitality. Particularly memorable was staying in the traditional inn section of Kyoto's Miyako Hotel, where guest rooms look into a garden. Nothing seen during a college trip to Europe could compare with the simple power of Japanese design. At the Portland Japanese Garden, these feelings returned. Learning the name of the Portland Garden's former curator, Hoichi Kurisu, who had led its growth from 1968 to 1972, Anderson found Kurisu's number in the phone book. He called Kurisu from the airport before returning to Chicago. With little idea of what he wanted exactly, and no sense of how long it would take, Anderson asked Kurisu if he could come to Rockford. Although skeptical, Kurisu promised to send Anderson a few articles on his projects. To Kurisu's surprise, Anderson read them and then called back, asking him to come to Rockford in the fall to create a Japanese garden around the pond. Kurisu's first visit in the fall of 1978 presented little more than a client anxious to do something quickly and a Japanese yukimi-style lantern sitting forlornly by a natural pond in a half-cleared tangle of trees and shrubs. However, the site, defined on the north by a hill leading down from the Anderson home and on the south by a natural spring-fed creek flowing west into the Rock River, was alive with possibilities. On that visit, Kurisu worked on the north side of the pond, the area directly visible from the house above. He noticed that in contrast to the other private garden clients he had met in Japan, working with his teacher Kenzo Ogata, who left design decisions to the garden builder, Mr. Anderson was more involved. At the conclusion of Kurisu's initial trip, Anderson asked if he wanted to come back the following spring to create a more substantial pond garden. Kurisu asked, "How far do you want to go?" Anderson shrugged and responded, "I don't know." Intrigued, Kurisu agreed to return when the weather warmed up. Little did John Anderson know that in Hoichi Kurisu, he had discovered a kindred spirit, another man with a vision. A decades-long collaborative effort ensued.